I want the panel to talk about technology and security. And I'm going to ask some questions. And if I can ask the panel for the first round, just to be quite brief. So Angie, do you want to grab the microphone? And if I was to ask, what does technology mean to you in security industry? You've got like 2 sentences. What does that mean when we're saying technology and close protection? What is technology?
Thanks, Mac. So technology for me is ever evolving, and it means that the operative has to modernise without losing focus on the protective security arrangements that are in place. And that's not just the operative, but the company as well that they work for. So it's a much larger thing than just the individual.
Okay, Chris?
Am I answering the same question?
Everyone's asking the same question.
Great.
I'm lazy.
2 things. My father, being in the aviation industry, he told me, Chris, technology and computers and whatnot, they do 2 things. They make you make bigger mistakes faster. And he's absolutely right. So for me, technology is something that is important, and we need it, and we have it, and we are using it, obviously, because we are evolving. But technology doesn't mean it has to be something completely new and something very super complicated. Technology can be just a smart solution for a complicated problem. So I do believe technology has a place in close protection, but it doesn't always have to be a flying saucer driven by a new type of battery. It can be a pen that writes underwater because, well, I work CP in the Netherlands and you're not in Amsterdam if it ain't raining. So technology has its place, but we don't always have to look too far to find it.
Thank you.
Great answer. Jonathan?
I was going to be a lot more brief than that, actually. So I was going to say, for me, it's a deterrent, it's an evidence-gathering tool, it's a reassurance, and it's a cost-saving device at the end of the day. So.
And Scott?
I think we'll get shorter as it goes along. I'll just use 6 words. Friend and foe, and help and hindrance.
Oh, I love that. So that
I want to get to the bar.
Oh, hang on, you don't go. You just made so many friends. Okay. So now I'm going to ask a different question. So is technology driving us, or are we driving technology in this industry now? Who's in the driver's seat?
Well, it should always be the individual or the company, the people. I think that when we're dealing with the protective security of people or organisations or corporations, we often forget about that this is somebody's life, these are people. And when you are trying to find an overall physical security solution for a family or a person or an organisation, it is very complex. And I don't think that there is one solution. It's a complex problem, and I think that what you need is a blended solution, which will always involve personnel, technology, and the physical elements of things, as well as cyber. It's too complicated to put one solution to it.
I believe that we are somehow in between 2. I think we are one of those generations that are never going to see the full product of what we are creating today. I think my little nephews, they will see what we have managed to put on the planet, technology-wise. I think we will be the ones, who wants an aircraft that doesn't have pilots? Pilots, and I hope there's no pilots here, but pilots are completely redundant in an aircraft, and a computer can do it all. Technology does it. I mean, FedEx flies planes without pilots. But when we have passengers or protectees, we cannot tell them, dude, I can give you a piece of technology that will protect you against everything, because they wouldn't trust it. So I believe we are at the crossroads where we will be sitting in the pilot seat with a German Shepherd next to us, and if we touch anything, the German Shepherd will bite us. But the passengers in the back are very happy because there is a pilot and the computer can actually do its job. And I think we are just sitting in that seat and we are being bitten all the time by this German Shepherd that is the big guy over technology. And we need to get used to it, to be able to use it correctly, and to gain more trust in technology that we are trying to put forward. Because in the end, I'm pretty sure that most of us still carry a pen and also have a little computer that can write stuff down. I know she is, because she's been writing down stuff, and she has 2 cell phones. I mean, oh my God, just record what everybody is saying and you got the same thing. But she's still writing it down, so crossroads.
Thank you. For me, I think risk drives technology, because as risk evolves, so does the technology. So a good example of that would be in the retail industry with body-worn video. That's something that predominantly the police were using, but when we saw that risk evolve in retail and other sectors, we included that as a risk profile. So for me, risk will always drive the technology, and we have to step up with that technology to meet that risk. And it would be very specific to the environment. So super yachts, for instance, we're looking at thermal imaging cameras at the moment, anti-drone technology. In retail, you're looking at gatekeeper systems, you're looking at body-worn video. In man guarding, you're looking at apps that allow a patrol officer that when he leaves the CCTV room, that he has a notification on his mobile phone that alerts him to some activity on the site, that he can remotely log into that CCTV and look at that without having to go back to the CCTV room. And there's also a cost perspective from it as well, in relation to GSOCs and ESOCs, looking at taking some of those service level agreements and third-party agreements away from those suppliers and bringing them in-house. I recently worked on a project that the return on investment was millions. So there's definitely the need there and the drive there for technology to evolve. And I think risk will drive that.
Scott, you said earlier your 6 words.
I'll use a few more now.
Yeah, well, damn
I've got
straight.
5 now.
So I love that, right? Technology, friend or foe, help or hindrance.
Yeah.
Okay, so please expound.
I think for me, I'll use a driving analogy in there in the answer as well. But I'll start, when I started my CP career 21 years ago, I was, we were at the time with somebody who joined in the 70s, and I was quite proud showing him this Palm Pilot that I had. Anyone remember those? Which had everyone's number on it, police forces around the UK, all the touch of a button. And as we walked through our office and our yard, somebody was cleaning a car, and he literally took his notebook out of his pocket and dropped it into the bucket of water, and he says, "Can you do that with your Palm Pilot?" And I thought, well, no, I can't. And it's a bit like the old story about the Americans inventing an anti-gravity pen, and the Russians use a pencil and paper. Fast forward that 21 years, if I was doing the same today, I could take out my iPhone 13 and I could throw it in the bucket, because technology does advance. And I think in the last few years, you think about the age of some of the people in here, what we've seen over the last 40, 50 years. CDs, DVDs, videos, etc., etc. Technology is speeding ahead, so sometimes it is very, very hard, and certainly in the last few years, it's very difficult to keep up with it. So I think technology sometimes drives us. The other way around, I said I'll use a driving analogy. Recently at COP26 in Scotland, electric vehicles being used, and I think that might be, certainly from a protection point of view and a security perspective, where technology isn't quite as fast. The technology's there, but then if you look at what we fundamentally want to do, we want to protect somebody. Now, if that car's only got a range of X, or it needs to be recharged for 8 hours, then it's easier nipping to the petrol station, putting a tank of diesel in or petrol, and then getting up to Scotland. If you've got somebody on board and say, "Sorry, sir, ma'am, I've got to stop for 8 hours to charge the car," perhaps that's where technology isn't quite as fast.
You bring up a good point about the electric cars at COP26. There's a situation where they're going, you have to use Teslas, and the vendors are going, you have to use our drivers. And then you're like, hang on, but we want security trained drivers. And they're like, nope, if you want our cars, you use our drivers. Now you need to work with that and work around it. So technology, in my humble opinion, needs to have two criteria that makes it useful to us. One is intuitive, and one is easy to use. And for me, intuitive means kind of anticipatory computing. It needs to know what I need. And ease of use for me, more than 2 clicks, and I'm really not interested. many of the technologies I feel that we use in CP are too clumsy, or it's an oversaturation of information, of Intel feeds, of many things that my focus is on this here device and not on the environment, on this device and not looking for the threat. Often when we're teaching, and I think Mr. Terrett will attest to that, the students are so, a herd of elephants could walk past them and they wouldn't notice because they're so busy texting and reading Intel feeds and traffic patterns. Yeah, in ops as well, right? Checking the traffic patterns, etc. So my next question is, does intuition trump technology, IA? So at what point do I say, yeah, this is the Intel feed, this is the Intel brief, this is what technology's telling me. I grew up in the city, I know the traffic patterns, and the heck with it, I'm going this way.
Thanks, Mac. I think that the solution is different depending on your role. So if we're just drilling down into the individual operative that is standing next to a principal, you must never lose sight of what your aim and goal is around protection, which is protecting that person. And so therefore you have to have your concentration and your attention on the job in hand. If you are in the SOC, then you are going to have your head down and you are going to be reading the intelligence, you're going to be looking for patterns. And so I think that intuition is definitely most important for whatever role it is that you're doing. The individual operator that's on the street, if you're looking down at that granular detail, then you definitely need to have your wits about you, attention up, looking around. And Scott and I have both got the same background, ostensibly in policing and protection. And we would both say this, the last 10 feet are your responsibility. And there are layers of the onion that are around that. And certainly whatever your layer that you are responsible for within those layers of protection, it differs as to what your requirement to be involved and immersed in technology is. If you're next to the principal, it should be a much lower level of interaction with your phone. You can do all that through earpiece or headphones, etc., etc. But your focus is on the gut instinct, the immediacy of what's happening around you. As I say, if you're in the SOC or you're a support function, then you will be much more immersed in technology, and that's important to have that analytical approach to what it is you're reading and seeing and passing on the intelligence. So it very much depends what your role is.
Intuition, instinct, experience, I don't believe that all of those come for a fresh operator. Somebody who is very fresh in the field might not have the instinct and the experience to be able to use it in a good way. I think that comes with experience and with having seen a lot of stuff and knowing intuitively I know what's going to happen next, so I can adapt myself to this and I can be ready. That's where perhaps artificial intelligence can come and help us. It can come in and give us some tools to allow for my instinct to get better. To give you a small example, a couple of months ago we did a very big counterterrorism exercise in the Netherlands, in the biggest mall of the Netherlands. They told us, we want you to do whatever you want, it needs to be a terror attack, and we'll see how police and everybody reacts. Please don't tell us the scenario, just go. The mall has a camera system that identifies weapons in the hands of people. Awesome technology. I mean, you walk in with a weapon, you're an active shooter, and the cameras identify that, they give a warning, and they follow the guy. That's awesome. So the people in the camera room were looking at this, and young people, not a lot of experience. The active shooter takes out his weapon, starts killing people. The camera notices, gives them a warning, and saying, there you go, there's somebody with a weapon, you need to do something. This person walks into the bathroom. So now, from the communication center, they go, guys, we got somebody with a weapon, he's in the bathroom, and he can go either left or right. The person who was watching the camera was waiting for the camera to identify where this person was going to come out. While one of the older security guards that really knows people, he knew if that guy went in there, he went in there for this and this reason, and was actually already evacuating people from the side that he was going to come out. So technology helped him to identify the threat, but didn't provide him with the solution that will avoid the next upcoming problem. That's his instinct. So if we take away from people the ability to get experience without technology, then they will rely so heavily on technology that will, in my opinion, never have the same brain power as a human with experience. So we need to throw people in and have them use the pencil before we have them use the computer, because otherwise they're just going to get lazy. My little nephew will WhatsApp my brother, his father, saying, "Dad, could you add some more time on my iPad?" I didn't do that because I had my little toy soldiers and I was playing underneath my blankets with my light, and I didn't need to ask permission from my dad to stay up longer. But he doesn't know how to cheat on my brother because, well, he was given technology that is controlled by somebody else. So I think we need to provide some without technology experience before we give technology in hand.
So, Chris, I think that's a magnificent answer, by the way. I think your point so well taken, right? The fire alarm can go off, but just because there's an arrow flashing that we should evacuate that way doesn't mean that we're going to run that way, right? We need to make that decision. Ivor, you want to jump? Right, Jonathan.
Yeah, it was a very good answer because you've left me very little to elaborate on now. So thank you for that. I would say very quickly then that it's a very good example. So technology can't feel. Well, at the moment it can't. Maybe in future generations. But you can't beat tuition in a situation where something doesn't feel right. Now, technology can allow you the ability to understand analytics and to represent those figures in a pattern that you may be able to predict what's going to happen, but actually feet on the ground and that awareness of the situation and that experience will trump technology every day.
Yeah, I think I concur. Again, friend and foe, I would think. Certainly in the police and the close protection courses, it's only recently we've actually allowed technology to be used. We always expected people to manage maps, but you have to move with the times. I mean, unfortunately, not fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of youngsters these days, I've never read a map. Everything's done on phones, everything's done on technology, and there's a place for it. I think it's really important to have that blend, that symbiotic relationship between the two, where you do your research maybe on computers or on telephones, iPads, etc., but you can still back that with a map in case it goes wrong. And I think for me, the GPS as an example is always a secondary. I've normally got the route in my top pocket on a piece of paper, so I can just quickly look at it if I'm driving. I've looked at the route with the backup car, the escort section, whatever, I've still got the maps on the knees just in case, supported by technology. But again, it's a secondary thing, I think, the technology. One quick example, on a motorcycle tour in Norway, I think we'd left Oslo and we put in the port we wanted to go to that took us to Denmark. Kristiansand or Kristiansund, I can't remember. Anyway, one is right at the very north of Norway and one's right at the south where you need your ferry for Denmark. So it's a good job I did double check because we could have ended up going 9 miles the wrong way. So I think a blend of the two for me has probably been said by the rest of the panel.
So that makes perfect sense to all of us. Anybody in the room under the age of 30? Right. Because that just makes perfect sense, except when you say that to a 25-year-old, they just look at you like, yeah, granddad, technology works, dude. Except that when you've traveled the world a little bit doing this job, you discover that half of Africa, when you're outside the big cities, short of your sat phone, nothing's going to work. In Mauritius, by the way, just about nothing works if you're outside a hotel. So if you can't read a map, or you can't write down or remember a number, or the client's details, you will have a problem. I think a lot of the young people in the industry forget that there's more to the world than just Europe and the United States. It's a big place, and the places where technology is not reliable. So, because, I don't want Pelham to be cross with me. So, there's two phrases that I've learned to hate with a passion over the last 2 years, besides social distancing, because it's actually anti-social distancing. But post-pandemic and new normal, all right? I don't know what either of those two terms mean. I've had this discussion with a lot of people. Firstly, we didn't survive a zombie apocalypse, right? Or the sun falling out of the sky. So I'm not sure what post-pandemic means. But people keep saying, how has the industry changed? The reset to the CP industry. Now, I worked for one of the premier EP companies in the world. I now have my own EP company. Most of my leadership worked together with me in that premier EP company for 20 years. And I'm still trying to figure out what's changed. Because it beats the out of me. Because if we went to Africa on a safari, we'd be worried about malaria and take the same precautions we need to take for malaria or for dysentery or for an earthquake in this zone or whatever other threat we were dealing with. Ivor said this at the beginning of the pandemic, and he said it today. It's just another threat on the threat landscape. And I've heard a lot of talk about medical contingencies. We have a medical contingency. You didn't have one before? You didn't clean your vehicles before? You didn't have medical options before the pandemic? This is news to people. Honestly, forgive me, I don't get it. So panel, do you think things have changed significantly? Right? And Chris, I'm going to start with you, because I'm going to ask this question, just because I'm going to spike the ball for you.
Thank you so
So
much.
Chris, what do we do for COVID-19?
Okay, so yeah, I am a close protection officer, and I turned paramedic 12 years ago because I lost the buddy of mine who was bleeding on the ground. I was like, dude, you got to stop, because I know that's not good, but he didn't, and then he died. And I didn't know what to do, so I turned to paramedic. And today I'm always introduced to the client as, this is Chris, this is your paramedic. Oh, that's great to have a paramedic when, there's COVID. Like, oh my God, the top professor of my country doesn't know what the hell to do. What do I know what to do about COVID? And I'm looking, people in the EP industry, and everybody is like, oh, we got this big pandemic, okay, so what are we going to do? When your client is being attacked by a nuclear bomb, what are you going to do? There's nothing you can do. There's nothing I can do. There's government regulations, and we all adhere to it. Wash your hands and wear a mask. I don't know. What do I know? And as you just said, yeah, what has changed, and is it a new normal? No, we have faced a threat. We have faced something, and we are going on, but it has not been something that was in our hands. It was not really something that we could do anything about. I've been going to Libya the last year, and arriving in Libya and doing my job and protecting people and working, they were clearing mines, and I was like, dude, any COVID stuff? And they just looked at me, yeah, there is COVID, yeah, sure. You see that mine? Life goes on, and yes, people did, die from COVID, and people will, and there will be other diseases, but there's simply some things that we can, whatever we want to do to adapt to, we won't be able to. Yes, we have to fill in more forms, but we still can travel. Because if you look at it, we can all still travel. My country doesn't allow me to go to the UK. It doesn't. Red list. You come back, 10 days quarantine. The EasyJet flight was full of people going to the UK. Last year, I flew to Africa about 20 times, and the flights, SM Brussels Airlines flights, are overbooked to Africa, going and coming. Explain that to me. So yes, we have a pandemic, and we learn to deal with it, but I don't think we have done anything to improve our clients' safety for this pandemic. We haven't. Because what did you do? And if you did improve your client's safety in this pandemic, against this pandemic, tell people about it, because that's what everybody is looking for. We have just, there was a threat. How do you deal with it? You don't. You try to give best answers possible, but we are just mimicking what everybody else is doing. How will we go without this pandemic? The same as we did before, and basically the same as we do now. And everybody will keep washing their hands more. And there will be no social distancing, because was there really social distancing? Seriously? Sitting on the plane next to somebody? We will not sell the seat next to you so you have some room. Hello? So, yeah, I agree with you, Mac. It's tough. It's been hard because it has made things difficult, but our industry has done not a lot, I think, to improve the safety because of the pandemic. We have just gone along with the flow.
Okay, so my perspective is slightly different in so much that I think biosecurity is now here to stay, and it's mentioned more. So you're right, Mac, about malaria. If you were going to the countries that is an issue. We've also had Zika virus from Brazil and South America. We've had different viruses that we are aware of, and those viruses affect different people. So if you were travelling with a female principal to Brazil, the Zika virus is very relevant, and you would have that biosecurity conversation. It's also for me about some personal responsibility from the client and the family office, as well as the protection companies and security providers. Personal responsibility of declaring that you are unwell, or declaring that you have this, or knowing that your principal or their family or where you're going, they do have vulnerabilities, because it is very irresponsible of you to expose the principal or their family if you know there is a vulnerability. If they may have personal views on vaccinations, and you have to respect that, whether or not you agree with it or not. So you maybe are exposing yourself to a vulnerability that they are exposing you to, because they are anti-vaccinations, and that's about the respect as well. What I also find in this industry is that people want to safeguard their position. They are so worried about somebody else or another company taking their position that they are more willing to expose themselves to risk or their client to risk, because they do not want to lose that job. It's very difficult to stand down and say, I've got COVID, I do not want to expose you. So people will take the risk, they will not test, and they will spread it more, because they're trying to safeguard their own income, livelihood and profession. So it's about being ethical, I think, and having the trust and relationship that you've got with the client or the family office or the company that you're working with, to show that you are ethical, that you are not going to expose yourself or them to that problem and step down. They will think more of you and employ you again in the future, rather than infecting half of the family and the family office. So from my perspective, it's about a total respect of biosecurity and keeping it relevant and mention not just about COVID, but about the whole biosecurity piece.
Well put, Andrew.
I think what I've learned from COVID is certainly not to hold any parties at number 10 and then lie about it. That would be the first thing. It was a Cobra meeting, apparently. So I think we've all done very well, though, in COVID. I think the way that we've reacted to that risk and the different tests that we've had to do. I mean, it's a very tricky question, really. So from a technology perspective, there are a number of different technologies that were introduced from heat technology. Wasn't very effective. I think we're a long way away from introducing any kind of technology that can help us in our goal to beat COVID. I think it comes down to common sense at the end of the day. It has brought with it some extra risks, not just from a health perspective, but the responsibility placed on associates and staff to interact more heavily with customers, especially those customers that aren't wearing masks. It can create an environment of conflict. And then we rely again on technology like body-worn video, training, etc., and things like that. So it's a difficult question.
And you get the last word. So now it's you standing between them and drinks.
I agree.
Good man.
Has it changed significantly? I think it has, for a couple of ways. If we talk about the physical aspects of providing, executive close protection, then we may have had to think of some different ways of managing those risks through COVID. So it may well be that traditionally you've had the front seat in the car, and because the family are maintaining a bubble, then you might have had to do that differently. There might not have been a BG or a PPO in the front car. That might have been delivered by the backup car. Some nuances there. Try and get that back in the future. I think as well, on the technology side, we've probably seen a lot more people get involved with technology that traditionally wouldn't have. So you think about your elderly parents or grandparents who would never ever have bought anything on Amazon or on the internet, you know, through you know, COVID and lockdowns, they've been forced essentially to you know, learn a little bit about technology. That's got its good and its bad, particularly if you're involved in the industry yourself and your parents, grandparents might be posting things online about you because they're very, very proud of you, whilst you're maintaining your, you know, a kind of zero social media approach, perhaps. So I think, yeah, those two things for me. We might have changed how we deliver the physical side of it, but I would say now we've certainly got a lot more people who are tech savvy as a result of the pandemic.
Perfect. So thank you very much to the panel. I thought the answers were great, even the questions were miserable, but thank you for tolerating us. Mike? You can give them a round of applause, it's fine.